Good morning, everyone. My name is Morris Mtombeni from the Gordon Institute of Business Science. Welcome to this morning's Flash Forum. We take this opportunity to thank our esteemed president for releasing us from his shackles and allowing us to start imagining what the next normal is going to look like, initially under level 2 and in due course as the world normalizes. I'm joined today by the Chief Executive of Sun International, Mr. Anthony Lemming. Anthony, welcome.
Morning, Dr. Morris. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Morris is just fine, Anthony. My parents didn't call me doctor when I was born. I'm only doctor when I'm in the classroom. So I see you joined Sun International in 1999. I can't imagine that you've had a more tumultuous time than we have in 2020.
Yeah, look, I've been here 21 years and never experienced anything like this. The financial crisis, there's nothing. The group's been through a lot in the last 21 years, and I've certainly been there the whole time. So the last 6 months or 5 months have not been very pleasant.
Yeah. And so, as you know, we have people watching this live streaming. And what I'd like to do today, given that the tourism industry is very topical, is ask our audience to also participate in the conversation. And I'm going to do so by, on a regular basis, just popping up some pop quiz questions for you to reflect on. So I'm going to start with the first one, which relates to the South African domestic tourism industry. The question is, how long will it take for South African domestic tourism to return to pre-COVID levels? And so I'm going to encourage all the viewers to start answering the question. And if you're not interested in answering the question, you can click to get rid of the questions. And in the meantime, let's kick off with that one, Anthony. How quickly do we think we're going to do a turnaround? Are we looking at an L shape, a V shape, a W shape, a U shape? What are we looking at in terms of return to domestic tourism?
You know, in tourism, there's obviously so many sectors that impact it. You've got your business tourism, you've got your corporate conferencing, and your leisure. So, you know, you've got all sides. So I think each sector needs to be looked at independently. We're not talking foreign right now. So when you look at it, I think there's going to be some pent-up demand for leisure tourism. Okay. Unfortunately, leisure generally fills up your weekends, maybe some soft midweek, but midweek tends to be soft for business. I think there's going to be a lot of companies out there trying to push to get occupancy, which is good for the consumer. I think there'll be great deals going through. You can see with some of these game lodges offering unbelievable specials as there's no international customers. So I certainly think there'll be some pent-up demand. There'll definitely be some price advantage for the consumer, and that'll help the industry build some occupancy, you know, get back some people at work and hopefully build. Unfortunately, I think corporate is going to take some time to come back. But I do think in the longer term, with the more work from home environment, you know, conferencing could become a lot more important as a way of business people and you connecting with your colleagues with sort of more people at home, working from home. So hopefully in the future, corporate conferencing can pick up. It will take some time though.
So the poll indicates that very few people, 5%, think that that we'll be back in the next 6 months. A lot more people, about 20%, believe it will take between 6 months to a year. And the bulk believe it will be between a year and 3 years. So clearly the people on the call are quite pessimistic about the short run return of South African domestic tourism. Do you think this is a fair reflection of where you are at Sun International, or are you a little bit more optimistic?
I think, look, in the kind of assets we have, I think we got quite a few. You've got the 5-star Table Bay, which is really reliant on international markets. You know, it's 85% international. That's going to take a long time. And certainly, I think maybe towards the next year when international travel hopefully frees up, I think there will be demand for Cape Town from internationals, and certainly that one will recover, but obviously a long time before anything happens. Then you look like a product like Sun City. I think there is some demand for people to get out and have some fun. But as I mentioned, you know, leisure tends to be a weekend type thing as opposed to midweek. So a bit of demand will be happening, but midweek will suffer. So I agree. I think business is going to take a while. You know, 2 to 3 years. I think it will take. I think it's not far from what the poll said. But certainly, I think there will be some demand and there will be some pent-up demand. But all sectors to come back quickly is not going to happen.
So you mentioned two of my most favorite assets of yours. Table Bay is a beautiful property, and it's well positioned right by the ocean. And so I would suggest that maybe you rethink your strategy about only focusing on the international tourists, and maybe do some deals for people like us. You know, academics, we don't earn a lot of money. And unlike some of my colleagues, I'm not too scared to go get onto an airplane. So I'd be very happy to go and revisit Table Bay. And of course, those of us that have got children in particular, we've all been cooped up in our homes and we are going stir crazy. So Sun City is something that we look forward to. So now let's look at the international tourism. Let me kick that off also with a poll question, which is how long will it take for international tourism to return to pre-COVID-19 levels, bearing in mind that we're still in lockdown? And so I'd be interested to hear your perspective in terms of what the Sangoma eyes are telling you.
Yeah, well, look, I think obviously you got to depend on government to open up the international airways and, for people to be able to come, number one. I mean, that's obviously critical. They're talking about December and that's around there. So that's critical. That happens first. There's a lot of factors in terms of quarantine periods. Will there be quarantine? Will you have to quarantine coming to South Africa? Will you have to be quarantined when you go home? So until those factors are clear, there's certainly not going to be a quick opening of international tourism. So I think we are very cautious to expect much. I think you'll see yesterday that Mount Nelson's only going to possibly open in December. We're probably talking Table Bay in November. And again, you're absolutely right. I think we'll definitely go after a bit of the local market. There'll be some great deals. Table Bay is a special place. It's probably my favorite place, to go in the group, and it really is a special hotel. But I think, it's going to take some time, and a lot depends on how the virus unfolds and what happens in terms of international airlift, because we don't know how much more airlift we're going to have when we get back. What's going to happen to SAA? How many flights? Are they going to keep the 2 flights to the UK and other destinations? So a lot of depends on airlift, and we've seen a number of airlines go under in this period. So those things are critical to getting international tourism back.
Yeah. So the poll is also reflective of your view that we're still going to see 57% of the people that have been polled believe it will also take between 1 and 3 years. I think this is more realistic also, given that we're still in level 2, so we're not even sure when level 1 is going to reopen. But coming in, you might have to hire me as one of your spokesmen here, Anthony. I've attended a few virtual weddings, and I know those people are really, really upset that they weren't able to celebrate. So you may want to kind of consider like catch-up wedding packages, celebrations to kickstart the domestic tourism. And in fact, given that we are limited to about 50 people at a time, it might not be a bad idea to invite the brides and grooms to spend a long weekend and invite their people to come in dribs and drabs, 50 at a time, and you can still accommodate your 200 people and so forth over a 4-day weekend. That's just an idea, for example, to think about.
Good idea.
You mentioned earlier that that conferencing may well become something that we need to think about. So let me test that and see what the rest of the polls thinks about that in terms of virtual meetings. As you know, we are doing this particular program on a virtual meeting, and virtual meetings, our next poll, please, Asogran, and in terms of our virtual meetings have now kicked off. And so my poll there is, given the uptake in virtual meetings, what do you perceive the impact will be on local business travel in the long term?
My view on local business travel is going to be under extreme pressure. And I'm talking the overnight stays, the in and outs. That's going to take some time before that comes back, because people have got very used to video conferencing. You can achieve a lot. And certain things where people used to think you had to be in person, those perceptions are gone. People can certainly do training online, and a lot more things can be done online. What we really sort of looking for is that people need to get together. People need to interact physically, not just on terms of virtually. And I think those sort of interactions getting together, having a conference, having catch-ups with a wider group is critical. And I think that will increase over time, while the overnight quick business trips, I think, are going to be under pressure for a long time.
So it's quite interesting. 46% of the respondents are saying your demand will reduce by between 21 and 50%. 24% are saying it will reduce by more than 50%. And 27% say you will never return to your previous levels. Do you agree with that? Which of these do you concur with?
Yeah, I think business travel will take a long time to get to pre-levels. As I said, we're replaced with some conferencing business. I think that's where we're looking, and we're going to push quite hard. And conferencing can be done both physically and virtually. You could link up Cape Town office and Joburg office, one at the Table Bay, one at Sun City, and still getting people to interact and actually have a personal interaction, because it's very difficult having that personal interaction, having that catch up with your colleagues virtually. So I certainly think that business travel, that overnight trip, that sort of in and out, like I say, to go and meet the head office or go back down to the branches, that travel is going to take a long time to recover. And I certainly hope the conferencing business will actually pick up over time for people to make sure they do interact as business colleagues.
So that speaks to one of the questions that we have from Nkahloleng Mokwele, who says, where do you anticipate the next change in your business model will come from?
I think, you've got the hotel side, and clearly leisure getaways, making that experience is critical, and it always has been. Fortunately, we're not other than the conferencing type business, we only have one or two products that really serve the businessman, the overnight stay. For example, the Mazda Santon, Mazda Times Square a little bit to a lesser degree, because we use it a lot for the casino. So on the casino side of our business, the big move is obviously online, and will they legalize online gaming? As you've already seen, some sports betting, they are starting to offer games that they call live games and bet games. They really are casino games, and there's a big move, I think, internationally and locally, probably for online, and I think that's the big disruptor. Again, I think there'll still be room for land-based casinos, because people ultimately do want to get out, do want to get away from home, but the online space there is the concern. And certainly then virtual meetings where you can have people getting together in different places, where they still got people gathering, is going to be a change as well. So you don't necessarily have to fly colleagues from America or somewhere else. You can actually catch up on conferencing, speak to everyone, as opposed to everybody flying into one destination. You could have the local destination here. And that's the kind of change we're expecting and anticipating from what's happened in the last 5 months.
Thanks, Andrew. So I note you used the word online, and then another word was concern. Is it a concern because you're not appropriately represented in the online space, or is it a concern because it's going to be a challenge on your business model? I suppose maybe as you're thinking about that, I just want to also refer to one of my favorite MBA alumni, Avesh Inderjeet, who says, what is the Sun International doing to reinvent their business model to entice customers, especially now since the pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation? So essentially it's really trying to understand how well positioned are you given this accelerated digital transformation?
Look, the one thing about the Sun International business model and the products we have, okay, now I'll deal with first of all, so leisure, casinos. We are about face-to-face interaction. We are about the guests coming to experience what we have. So, that's the nature of the business. I mean, the casino environment is not about sort of, we have these big properties in that. So our threat to the casino environment is how much goes online. At this stage, there are some of these online games, as I mentioned, in terms of live games, bet games, being offered by sports betting sites. We plan to do so as well. We do believe it's the gaming board shouldn't be allowing it, but I think the need for taxes, the need for that, they are. So we will be joining the party. I think our benefit in terms of that online space is we have the customer database. That link between online and land-based is critical. So we're spending a lot of time making sure we have a platform, a seamless integration, one wallet straight into the, whether you're online or at land-based, and you're playing very similar type products. So you can have that experience where you move seamlessly between land-based and online. That's on the casino side. On the hotel side, it really is about the experience, because you can't do hotels virtually. You've got to make sure people want to get away. You've got to make sure that environment, that sort of offering is enticing. And we spend, therefore, a lot of time on our MVG program during lockdown and saying, is it appropriate offering? How are we making that program work for us? Because it is the best loyalty program in the sort of gaming and hospitality industry in South Africa. And we certainly are re-looking at repositioning that. We used to talk about 80% discount of rack, and don't think anyone knows what that means. We're now giving our top customers, this is the price you'll pay anytime. So you're not having this leverage pricing in December. You're going to be paying 10 grand a night, and then another time it's 1,000. So if you're a top loyal customer of ours, you're going to get great benefits, and they're very clear. So we spend time unpacking that, making sure the benefits of doing your business with us, playing with us, you'll be rewarded, and making those rewards very clear. So we really worked a lot on unpacking that and making sure we are meeting customer expectations. We're moving towards the digital sort of apps so you can interact with us and we can communicate more digitally. Because at the moment, your communication channels with a gaming environment are sort of SMS, email, which are archaic, and really SMS is very restrictive and expensive when you go to a large database. So we are looking to improve our communication. And a lot of it also goes into, because your top line's under pressure, is really analyzing how you do business and how can you do business better. And we've spent a lot of time on that. And I think we've really come to some, saved a lot of costs, got more efficient, and I think made sure we improved the customer experience, because that's critical.
Lovely. So there's two gentlemen, I'm going to combine their comments, Oscar Mdluli and Bennett Maluleka. And so they're really concerned, again, about this dichotomy of local travel versus international travel. So Oscar, for example, believed that the hospitality industry currently prices their property for international tourism and is not really spending enough time on South African clientele. And so the broader question between the two of them is, what steps is the industry going to take to refocus on the South African clientele and price appropriately to make the South African clientele be able to afford the wonderful properties that are available in our tourism portfolio?
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's a lot of mix of products, and those that are particularly focused on international. So when you're sitting at your 5-star hotel at the Table Bay, that's focused on international market. With the problem we're going to have over the next year of getting internationals in, we definitely going to have to focus on the local market, and that's really around pricing. It's going to be great deals, great offers, real value add packages, and unfortunately that's probably going to displace some of the 4-star market and some of the 3, because people will buy up because they can afford to, and so it's going to be through a real pricing strategy. When I look at a place like the Table Bay, I think if you look at all these international game lodges, where you pay. I'll send you the specials.
Let me tell you, just to digress, Anthony, I met at the time, it was my girlfriend, who is now my wife 20 years later. So we're talking when you joined, before you joined Sun International, I had a date at Table Bay in around 1997, 98, in that hotel. Wonderful memories. Went back a little later when we were married, and 25 odd years later, I still think very fondly of my time, the times that I've always been back. And at that stage, I was in financial services, so the money was not a problem. But as an academic now, I'd really want to make the point that it would really be great if we could have academic pricing for Table Bay.
Right now, South Africans need pricing, cheap pricing. I think that's annoying. So look, I think again, Table Bay is also a big hotel, so you've got 330 rooms. So what we're probably going to do is you still want to offer that unique experience, even if it's a lower rate. So you've got to reduce the number of rooms appropriately. Sort of, when I say reduce, just keep some closed, and certainly reduce the staff complement to make sure you can give that unique experience at the price that we can offer. So it really is about getting seen through until internationals come back. I think if you look at a lot of the rest of the product, there is international focused products, there is local focused. Sun City has a mix. We're busy. We were just prior to lockdown starting to upgrade the palace. The rooms were entitled and needed it. A lot of these projects had to be put on hold. We would like to get more of the international market into the palace, and obviously the wealthy local market. And there's a product for everyone, from the vacation club, cabanas, main hotel. When you look at a place like Sun City, I think people like to think it's expensive, but when you look at what you get, you can't compare it to Santon 4-star hotel. You've got transport, you've got the massive infrastructure, the golf courses, the whole product has to work. You're in a resort type environment, and therefore, we need to price appropriately. I don't think it's unaffordable for South Africans. Obviously it's not, given the cost. We don't make that much money, and most of what that we make there goes straight back into the product. So each one's different, but certainly our focus is number one, guest experience, service, and we've got to get that right. And we have slipped in the past. We are on top of it. We've got a new general manager in there. We've got a new head of resorts, and the focus is on the customer experience, the sales process. And certainly guest experiences is all what it's all about. So you go there, you have a great time, you come back, and it's cheaper to get a repeat customer than always trying to chase new. So getting your bookings right, getting your channel, get occupancies up, you can then get pricing right. So it's a difficult balance, especially a place like Sun City, given what there is there and given the size of the infrastructure, security, cleaning, housekeeping, gardens. Yeah. It really is a costly product. When you go there, the Valley of the Waves is free entry. Do people book, you're paying 2,000 Rand a night. Is that expensive with what you have on offer? And our view, it's not. Our view, it's still great value for money. But there's no doubt there'll be some great specials out there at the moment for people to come.
So I was looking at your site earlier and saw that on your board, you've got quite a strong financial acumen. In your management team, you've got very strong financial acumen. On your board, for example, 50% of the board members are all CAs. If you add the others that are in the accounting field but are not CAs, that takes you to about 2/3 of your board have financial qualification background as well as experience in the finance space, either operating for banks or investment companies or as auditors, as the case might be. So I wonder how that kind of experience has played a role during this period to enable you to pivot, to manage the cost reductions, and to be able to, if I can lean into a question by Hilton Gadmans, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. How has that helped you to work out what is a non-negotiable to ensure capacity and to manage costs? And where is it appropriate for you to take out costs and still maintain the integrity of the value that you're providing?
Just prior to lockdown, we had just released results where our earnings were up 91%. We had spent the last 3 or 4 years getting the balance sheet right after a really significant investment in Times Square, upgrades of Sun City, some investments in LATAM. And we were sort of, when I took over, probably definitely overgeared and probably overcommitted in terms of, Times Square. So we spent a long time getting our debt levels right. And literally the day that the president made his speech is the day we released results. And nobody wanted to hear about them. So, we were 91% up in earnings, debt levels coming very comfortable, and that changed overnight. Suddenly you're faced with a lockdown. When 3 weeks, you probably think, okay, that's fine, you can survive, that's not a problem. 3 weeks quickly became 5 weeks. 5 weeks, as we know, became 3 months. And then you started to open under very, very restricted circumstances, and really not the ability to cover some costs, but not to make money and cover your interest bills. So the whole environment changed. So having a strong board and with a financial background, was certainly very useful. I think, people, CAs, obviously everyone thinks they finance people. Most of CAs have been involved in business at fairly senior levels. And therefore, our board, I think, comes with quite a wide business background with a strong financial leaning. And I think in business investments and that, it's critical to have that sort of board. So it's been very useful having a board with strong financial acumen, especially when it's all about liquidity. It's about managing your debt levels, about managing your cost structure, your cost base, what you do. That's what it's about when you go into a lockdown position like that. And I think we went through quite a few phases. Phase one was, what are we going to do for 3 weeks? We sit on our hands and, you do it. And then you suddenly realize, hang on, this is not 3 weeks. This is going to be 5. And, so what procedures do we need to open? What are we going to do in health and safety? And it was a mad scramble to get your health and safety procedures right. Then suddenly you didn't need that because you were still closed for another month, and it became clear. And then it became a lobbying strategy. And that's when our chairman, Mr. Jabu Mbuza got involved, and certainly all the industry came together. We spent over 2 hours with the president on a call in terms of, explaining the industry, what the protocols we had in place, and trying to really get the industry's, case across that we could open safely. We have world-class procedures in our casino environment and in our hotel environment to make sure it's safe. So procedures went through lobbying process. And then once the lobbying was done, it came, for what now? And then it became, well, we can't waste this time. We've got to improve our business. We've got to make sure our business is enhanced. And we've got to make sure when we come out of this, we have a better business. And we went through every facet of our business from beginning to end, every cost. We sat down, literally who provides what, okay, to the customer level, to the supplier level. And we did some great rethinking. We started seeing where we had problems in terms of energy use, water use, because suddenly you got, literally it's turned off. And you can see if there's leaks at Sun City. We spend a lot of time fixing leaks. There's a massive amount of water that flows around Sun City. But it's very difficult to fix these things when they're not. Unfortunately, in certain cases that we wanted to get things done, like some of the piping, it's been stuck on the water, and Corona has delayed things. So some of the things you couldn't do because you weren't allowed to, and some of the products. So we spent a lot of time making sure that when we come out of this, our business is in a stronger, better business. We certainly collaborated very well. The leadership team's been fantastic. Each one's communication's been critical. And going through that process, we definitely believe we've done a lot of work which is going to position us in a better, that we are more cost efficient, we're more efficient, and we're more focused on the guest. So while it's provided an opportunity to do that, certainly the top line loss is going to be more than the cost savings by quite a long way. And then obviously the build up period, but we are in a better place. We have the right people that we have focused. And I think that's critical, coming out of this. And our board certainly, backed management 100% all along the way. We took big cuts. We cut everybody's salary to 40% during the lockdown period. And even now, we're not back at normal levels, even that we open. We have a reduced structure with obviously the more paid getting a little bit less and taking a bigger cut and then going down. We've had to reduce hours because we're normally a 24-hour business. We've had obviously Sun City closed, casinos having to close at first 9, then 10, and then, so we've managed to manage our hours.
Casinos back open, Anthony?
Is which open?
Casinos, are they back open?
They are open. They opened on the beginning of July at 24 operations. Then the curfew was introduced, and then the curfew was adjusted. And now, obviously, going forward, the curfew is still there, but we do have the ability now to get our restaurants more active because very few people coming out. So we got a lot of concessionary restaurants, got some of our own, and we didn't really open them all initially, but we will open more of our food and beverage offering, which is good because bring more employees back and the economy starts ticking, which is critical.
Your food and beverages section is one of the most underrated properties that you have, and I think maybe it's an opportunity for your business right now to also start highlighting some of the more wonderful restaurants that you have in your properties. I speak from experience. My doctor keeps asking me to lose weight, but with the kind of properties that you have, it's very hard to stick to that to that request. So one of the questions from Jakes Makakabule is about agility. So do you believe that you have been shown to be an agile business? Because it seems like you came into the COVID experience of a strong balance sheet, of a strong performance. But despite that, given how as a 24-hour business, the margins in tourism are quite tight, you still had to take some drastic actions. Do you feel that from an agility score, 1 being very low, 5 being very high, where would you rate yourself? How agile is Sun International?
You got to look at the nature of business to see how agile you can be. Okay. Yeah. When you're a business that's got 25, 30 billion rand invested in the ground, you can't just say, well, what am I going to do with Sun City? I can just change the nature of Sun City overnight. You can't just go and say, well, Times Square, let's move it, let's change it. You've spent 4 billion rand there. So it's difficult to say you're agile in terms of how you can reinvent the business. What we were, I think, very agile is in taking quick action on our cost base. In a crisis like this, that's all you could really do. And I think we reduced our costs phenomenally well from employees, from service providers, from all those, because without that, you just can't, you're bleeding cash every single day. So we managed to really bring our cost bleed down through the support of our suppliers. And one of the key things we've done, and especially with those that support us, we will continue support. So, you've always got this tendering type environment. Those that came to the party now, we will support. Those that were actually a bit harder and wouldn't, because I think we're all in this coronavirus together. we are going to look down the line and say, how do we move away from those sort of people? I think this has been a place where you know your business partners, you start realizing who's there with you, understanding each one's problems. You know, a lot of companies that we were speaking to, I said, have you taken a 40% cut in salary or 60% cut? Have you had to, because they wouldn't want to reduce their costs, and they said all sorts of stories. I said, we're in this together, and our business can't survive. We've got cash flow. So were we agile and quick in terms of adapting to what had to happen? I think we were very quick in reacting to the environment and what actually happened. Can we quickly change our business model going forward? It's going to be a migration. It's not, unfortunately, we are an asset-heavy business. We have spent the money, and it's now how you leverage that with assets in the ground. Clearly, the move online, you know, our sports betting business is up on last year. It's starting to grow. And so despite sport being patchy, we've introduced new products, and we're going to certainly push that way. Online game is illegal. We are a licensed operator. You can't do just what you want. You can't just make changes. Even restructuring labor is a process where you've got to go through gaming boards with their impact in the gaming environment. Obviously, the leisure side's a bit different, and then it's more about the union. So yes, I think were we you know, flexible and quick and reactive? I think we reacted as quickly as we could, and I think we did exceptionally well to do what we did. Can we be agile and easy move going forward? You can't just change an asset base like that we have overnight.
Yeah. So in the process, what you've done, Anthony, is you have also answered Nkahlo Leng's question around repurposing some of your properties so that you can, given the digital impact. So I think that's what's quite helpful. So I'd like to pivot now to a question again in the tourism space on a poll regarding air travel. So if that can come up, please. So I'd like to ask the viewers to tell me, how has the COVID-19 affected their perception of air travel? And then simultaneously, will they fly? Because clearly, this would have an impact both for local and international tourists. In your view, what do you think, Anthony, in terms of the perceptions of air travel?
Look, there's no doubt while COVID's still around, I think people will perceive air travel to be a little bit of a, you know, cooped up in a small little plane or small environment with lots of people around you is not ideal. I mean, that's been built into our psyche. Am I personally worried about traveling? Not really. I actually already have had COVID, so I'm recovered. So I guess I don't have to worry about getting it in the short term. But I think certainly, I think people will be concerned. It will take a little bit of time. Hopefully a vaccine will come out and then people will go back to their old habits and not be too fearful of flying down the line. But certainly I think it has changed people's perception of flying.
So you just dropped a bomb on us there, Anthony, and you smiled about it. You said you had COVID and you've recovered. How was it? Was it rough? Or you asymptomatic?
Compared to what some people went through, I would say it was mild. It was uncomfortable. You didn't feel great. You know, I was sort of out of it for a week. I couldn't understand just before I got tested. They took 3 days to get my test results. I just felt flat. But certainly, you know, I had it mild. So, you know, compared to what some people have, it's obviously a dreadful disease to get and dreadful sort of virus. And, you know, fortunately, I have no comorbidities and I'm actually okay. So I got through it fine, no real problems. But it's not great. So you've got to be cautious. We locked down and we did everything we could, but I wouldn't say I had it terribly bad. You know, a week and a half out, but not too bad.
And were you still working at home or did you take time out completely during that period?
50-50. I still work from home. I haven't actually been back to the office yet. We've been, you know, had a few meetings here and there, but mostly we're working from home because of work at head office. Clearly our operations I've been to a couple of times. They are pretty active and working all the time.
Yeah, so it's quite difficult because I imagine as a leader of a business, when you're also then having to deal with that kind of health scare, it's also quite scary for your team. I imagine the team was able to keep going and support you during that period.
Look, absolutely. I think one of the key elements that in the crisis like this shows is who your leaders are and who the people that stand up. So I've been very fortunate. I've had some extremely good people around me. We formed a very small crisis team. We had bigger teams as well doing things, but certainly the team stood up. They did what had to happen. You know, when I was out, they said, listen, you rest, take it easy. You don't just that way, we'll deal with it. So to a large extent, we really worked well together. I think what this has taught us is collaboration is certainly improved through this crisis. And why? Because it's so quick to say, listen, get on a call, let's talk, as opposed to, well, when's everyone available to meet? It's quite quick. People are flexible. They're much more available. And I think collaboration has been one of the key things coming out of this, is that we've learned to work better together. And that's in all facets of the business, not just the leadership. In our marketing space, we brought the marketing people together with our creative, and we made sure that they were more communicating better, which results in a better output. So collaboration is the one thing taken out of this crisis. The ability to quickly get on a call, quickly have a discussion, has really, I think, played a big part. And going forward, we're really going to work that way. It's about those quick interactions. Meetings used to take an hour, then you'd stand around, chat for half an hour. Now it's half an hour, in, out, you're done, you've got your message across. People are working together, you can get people together quickly. And it really has been, I think, an eye-opener.
Lovely. So I'm a strategy academic, and I'm really interested in understanding how businesses use their resources to develop capabilities, and which capabilities make them quite competitive. And I concur with you that a collaboration capability, both inside the organization, but also with your suppliers and your partners outside of the organization, is going to be quite crucial. And with that in mind, I think I'd like you to reflect on that collaboration in light of the poll results, where about 74% of the respondents indicate that they have some concerns about flying, about taking air travel. And then 48% say they will only fly if they have to. And I think this would require a different conversation to take place within the tourism, hospitality, conferencing, and travel industry to turn some of these perceptions around. What kind of collaborations can we expect to evolve to facilitate that turnaround?
Look, I think the real issue is getting COVID sort of out of the way, and the virus not being an issue that we're dealing with. And I think that is the key. So certainly, how do we collaborate around getting through all that? As I said, our business is not that dependent on, we are more of a casino business. We have very important hotel assets like Sun City. So getting people to travel, and business people, I think, until we actually got through a bit of the crisis, until we at that point where we don't feel we have to wear masks and we're not exposed anymore, it's going to be difficult for us, for a business, to say we're all going to Sun City and everyone's flying, because some people will just be fearful, and can you force people to do that? So it will take a bit of time until that happens. Around the collaboration around what we've done as business and as our suppliers and partners, we've worked very closely with all of them to see what we can do better and how we improve the environment. And that's certainly been the benefit to us down the line in terms of improved guest experience, and all those sort of things is very critical.
So maybe building on this collaboration theme and also borrowing from Philemon Rapolo, what kind of collaboration is taking place between Sun International, the industry on the one hand, and then the government on the other, to enhance the image and market of the country so that we can actually expand the tourism pie beyond this COVID experience?
Look, what actually happened right up front, I spoke about the lobbying process, and when we really as an industry got together, and one of the things government's done, they've supported a lot of the small players as opposed to the big players, us, Turvest, Tsogo. So as a casino industry, we really got together, and we actually thought about the health protocols, and we worked together to make sure that our environment is appropriate, and we can address all customer concern and government. As a hotel industry, I think we've never worked better together. You often find these South African tourism and these bodies on the sides, dealing with people, and not always the decision makers are involved. This time around, it's been the decision makers getting involved and saying, how do we address this problem? How do we go forward? How do we work together to see what we can do? And I think we really did collaborate well to get government to position. The fact that casinos were allowed to open, I think, is a credit to what we proposed, the procedures we put in place, and what we actually undertook to do. So our environment is really safe, and it is really, probably safer than going to your local supermarket. So I think that's a credit to what the industry coming together, achieving that. I think on the tourism side, one of the problems we had is that although we collaborated, although we put a very good case forward to government, there's this fear within I think government and within people that travel brought corona. Okay, so travel brought the virus, which is true. It helped it spread and that sort of thing. So they tried to restrict movement. You try and restrict movement, no matter what you do, you can't convince them to allow interprovincial travel. So one of the key elements for tourism to open was the interprovincial travel, and I think we were very successful up to a point, but we couldn't break that one. If we had broken that one, Sun City could have opened a month or two ago. But now, obviously, going forward, it can now open. So I think collaboration with the industry and moving forward, we've certainly learned working together at a senior decision-making level is the best way to move forward. And certainly market us in the future, that airlift, getting the industry working together. We're certainly going to be working a lot closer as the industry going forward and collaborating a lot more to make sure that we can bring tourism back to South Africa.
So let's see what the poll believes in terms of South African government support to the tourism industry. So the next poll is, to what extent should the South African government support the tourism sector? All right. So I look forward to the answers around that. So whilst we're waiting for those answers, Anthony, one of the people on the chat here, Jean-Marie Mwamba, presume that's a French name, Jean-Marie, says, my concern is about the future for capital resources within the industry should this COVID-19 persist. In other words, if we are struggling to resolve, as you pointed out, the COVID problem, is it better to remain optimistic but not neglect their pessimism? So he'd like to know what happens on the downside if we're sitting here a year from now, and which is likely that in a year from now there would be some treatment available, but we as a continent cannot afford those, right? And so what happens in that scenario?
Yeah, look, every decision we made, you can only make with information that's available in front of you. And as I mentioned, when you thought it was 3 weeks, then 5 weeks, then 3 months, then 5, we took a decision quite early on that we should raise some capital, ensure we have liquidity available. Number one, we still have a lot of debt, so it's a matter of keep the banks at bay, to make sure the banks would support us and waive our covenant requirements and give us that headroom to start recovering. So the key thing is to manage liquidity in this crisis and have those resources, have that capital available to see through a prolonged period. We believe we raised 1.2 billion. Our banks were supportive. They've given us the covenant waivers, so they can't call default. They can't take that money. It's available to us and make sure we can see through quite a long period. With the trading levels we have got quite a lot of capital to see us through for a prolonged period. If we had another shutdown and everything else, and it was an absolute fall down for another 6 months, another year, we'd have problems. If we gradually build from here, we've secured the capital we need to get through this. When we spoke to our shareholders didn't want to throw us with, here's 4 or 5 billion rand, do what you want, or, you're fine for the next 5 years. They basically also wanted to make decisions on the information that's available in front of them. So we felt we raised enough for the short term. If we come down January and we can see the end to this and we can see it, and we still need another 500 shareholders on a better position to make that decision. So having available capital, we are looking at disposing of some non-core assets, some smaller things we have is critical. Managing your working capital is absolutely critical. So remaining liquid in this sort of crisis, making sure you've got the resources to see through it, has been probably the most important element we've had to work on over the last 6 months.
Lovely. So in terms of the poll that we asked, the final poll that we asked a short while ago, they said, to what extent should the South African government support? And 58% are suggesting that they should be providing tax incentives, and 38% they're suggesting there should be direct subsidies, as is the case in the UK. What do you think about these suggestions, Anthony?
Look, I think, the issue our government has is a lack of resources. So any sort of direct subsidies has been their real challenge. Subsidies have to be paid for somewhere down the line. So in my view, the best is probably tax incentives somehow to give you that room to generate more income, to bring in, if you bring in income, you get some alleviation, whether it be VAT, don't charge VAT on international travel, make it more affordable, or even local travel. So give some tax incentives. The government hasn't got money, and they're going to probably have to look for more taxes going forward. So for them to provide just money up front, I think is going to be very challenging, and you've got to be realist. We don't expect them to give that. But I certainly think incentives that stimulate growth, that stimulate employment, that stimulates that will generate more taxes in the future. And that's my view is we need incentives, we need incentivization for us to invest in the industry, for people to make it more attractive, to grow it. That's the only way that can really work. I don't think there's enough money to go around to subsidize the industry as such.
Thank you. So in terms of lessons learned, as an industry, what are some of the key lessons that you feel the industry has learned from the global lockdown, and what this might mean for the future of leisure, the future of conferencing, the future of travel and hospitality?
I think, a shutdown has become as a rude awakening. Normal companies that, you look at a 12-month going concern, there's just no issue, okay? Suddenly you close for 3 months and, you're sweating and you don't know what's next. So I think the level of debt that companies carry on their balance sheet is certainly going to reduce. And going forward, where people will gear down further. And I think having a lot less debt, what was seen as easily affordable in the past, I think, you need to reduce significantly. And you need to be much stronger to withstand sort of crises, which will put you in a very strong position moving forward. So that's probably the critical issue is manage your liquidity and make sure you have sufficient to withstand crises that you didn't even conceive previously. As a business, I think to deal with these sort of things, it's very difficult. It's around making sure that, you have a lot of flexibility in contracts. You have a lot more sort of variable type expenses that you can pull down. So even what was considered fixed should have a variable, much higher variable element, depends on your nature of your business, and making sure going forward you can manage that cost base when you have these sort of impacts. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an entire shutdown. I mean, as we said, even without international travel, we're going to be under pressure to get occupancies up. So being more flexible in your business and making sure you can control that a lot better is going forward is going to be a critical element.
So it's interesting you're talking about being smarter about our balance sheets, deleveraging, and obviously having sufficient liquidity. That would have an impact on your ROEs, clearly, to start depressing your ROEs. Do you agree with my interpretation? But I'm saying mathematically, it feels like it should depress your ROEs. And if so, what does this mean from an investor appetite point of view? Do we feel that investors might have a tolerance for depressed ROEs for a while until new business models emerge that can take us back to the ROEs that the industry was used to pre-COVID?
The business we have and the casino and the leisure, they're both highly cash generative because your assets are invested up front. Will people continually think about lockdowns into the future and that play a part in investment decision making? I think it'll be there for a little while. I think we are a pretty resilient industry in terms of cash generation, and I think it will come back. It's going to take some time. So I think that cash generation will be seen more as probably a low ROE type business, which is fine because your risk factors also drop down. Okay, the lower debt you have, the lower your risk factors, and therefore you could still be very attractive because you'll be quite a big dividend play. We've geared and used a lot of debt in the last 4 years, and we haven't paid dividends. If we go forward and we were getting very close to paying dividends again, if debt's lower, you're paying higher dividends, you've got higher cash returns, and it has another attraction in terms of an investment type destination for your money. Are you on mute?
Unmute, thank you. I'm going to have to pay a fine for that. One of the calls on the chat from Riboni Mutsatsi says, what is Sun International's outlook for, one, the continent of Africa, and two, the rest of the world? And I suppose, in my view, I'm much more interested in the continent of Africa, Anthony, because whilst we obviously have seen a huge surge, in part informed by the amazing testing capability that we have in our country, we haven't seen similar kinds of surges in the rest of the continent. And I don't know whether that should give us comfort or that should concern us from a business perspective. And so I wonder if at Sun International, you've got a view about what we should make of this.
Yeah, look, I share your concern. It's hard to imagine the cases we've had here and Nigeria's sort of got the cases they have, or Zimbabwe's got the nominal cases they have. Now, obviously, we've had a bit of testing and we've had an ability to do so. So it is a bit concerning where Africa really is in the corona curve and how under control it is. I don't think information, and I track it quite closely, what's happening, we just by way ahead of Africa, us and Egypt, and the rest is showing nominal cases, which doesn't seem right. So it is concerning, and what that means for opening of business to Africa going forward, how easily we do it, is, in my view, a concern with the lack of information on what we can and can't, look forward. So Africa, I think, has been for us always a huge challenge. We invested in Nigeria, and we're trying to get out. Like I think 90% of South African corporates. So yes, it's a big economy, but you're sitting with 400 million people. So relative to per capita, it's a tiny economy. Per capita, it's not very, very wealthy, and that tends to be a similar problem through Africa. So we would love more African business in South Africa, and certainly it has been a focus to try and attract more here, especially on the leisure side, because we do have, I think, better sort of tourism products generally. You obviously got some amazing things in Ethiopia, and the parks that we have in Africa are fantastic. But certainly we do have an amazing ability to bring shopping, to bring a game, to bring a tourist experience. So I think we would rather import business into Africa than Sun International going outside into Africa at this point in time. But I think Corona is my big worry of where Africa is with the virus.
And then globally, once the air travel is lifted, how long do you think it would take, not in terms of the business to come back, but do we see any normalization, or do we think there's any new business model that we need to think about from international partners, international tourists, and so forth?
Yeah. Look, I think this is one of the questions we've got to ask economists. I mean, when the US spends trillions of dollars, what long-term impact does that have? They can't just print cash. When the UK is spending, and you get half price, they pay for half your meal when you go out. What long-term impacts does this have on those economies? And consequently, what does that mean for South Africa? Does our currency weaken? Do their currencies weaken because they've spent so much money, free money, and made it all available? I actually don't know, and it's something I've been trying to play in my mind what that impact is. But when you saw the borders sort of opening in Europe and tourism, it bounced quite quickly. But now they're reacting sort of a bit of a second wave, and now there's quarantine and the UK's closed down. So there seemed to be quite a quick bounce of people wanting to get back to normal. I would hope that would translate into international travel down the line as well once the virus in South Africa and wherever the source destination has been resolved, that would bounce quite quickly. I think you've seen destinations like New Zealand where they've literally eliminated. I know they've had a couple of cases. Their reaction is closed borders, don't let anybody in. So they're certainly not going to let people out and back in until there's this thing. So Qantas isn't flying until I think April next year, other than to New Zealand. So you've got to find that both have to react, and Corona needs to be under control before I think there's going to be a serious return of international travel.
So the answer is the vaccine, and not just the vaccine, but the vaccine broadly available to the rest of the world as well.
I think so. I think so.
So as we are about to close, I would like you to reflect on you as a leader and your leadership team. What are some of the challenges? How have you coped? Who is supporting you? And how, because we're talking about how you are supporting everybody else, but who's supporting you to keep us going? Because we need businesses to be thriving. We don't just need you to survive. We need you to thrive, because when you thrive, the country thrives.
Look, I think, going through this, the people, our employees, when we first started and we reduced those to 40%, we had almost anger from employees. And, how can a company do this to us? It's not our fault. And as the progressed, I think people started coming around to reality. Hang on a second, we're all in this. And one of the key things was communicating and honest communication. There's no point in trying to hide from the truth. What is happening? What's going on? What can we do? What can't we do? So our communication at every level, from mine down to our next level, we insisted on guys communicating, department heads communicating with staff, keeping people informed, regular updates. We have a Sun Talk platform. And that's been, I think, our strength is being open, honest communication with our employees and at the manager level as well. Talking to people one-on-one, and your senior people are taking some extreme pressure. HR takes it. There's everybody's blaming HR. Everybody's screaming at them. What's this? What about my payments? What about my medical aid? Who's going to pay my, things? Surely the company can do this. And, we're under pressure. So HR, speaking to the people, has been critical. So our HR director has done a fantastic job. My CIO has done an unbelievable job in terms of managing the business, getting health and protocols, working with the different environments. And then our general managers of the properties have been fantastic. My financial director, Norman Bethel, he's been phenomenal in terms of managing the banks, managing interaction with all our sort of funders. We have quite a big consortium, and getting it done, doing the rights issue. So it really has been a team effort. And I think the most important thing, though, is communication to staff, keeping everybody informed, and regular updates. We've done video chats. I've done a video to staff, done sort of obviously regular writing on Sun Talk, on email, and trying to keep people informed. Now, unfortunately, in our environment, not many of our employees actually have emails. So you've got to use, like we have a platform, an app called Sun Talk, and getting the message out to staff of what's happening, getting that goodwill up as well. So a lot of our departments have done these motivational videos, until this too will end. And some great things have come out, some creativity from finance, some creativity from HR. And that's actually just added to people's mood and helped the spirit and saying, we're in this together. We one company, we one Sun, and we're going to get through this. And that sort of community type effort has been quite really good to see. It started off with even me just lighting a candle and sending a message to staff. And that was then processed. Every senior person lit a candle and did that. So early days, and then, but the regular communication is what's been key at every level.
Yeah. So if you want to do something in terms of lifting up the spirit, there's something called Jerusalem, which I've only discovered recently. So don't ask me what it is. It's a kind of a dance. And I saw that some universities in the health space, for example, have been challenging each other as to who's going to do the best Jerusalem dance. And so it may well be something that we say in the hospitality industry, let's get all the hospitality executives and their management teams to do a mass Jerusalem dance and post those videos and see how that goes. I certainly would be up to it and encourage the business schools to join you and see whether it's the hospitality or the business schools that can do better Jerusalem dances. But I think we do need to bring some fun and excitement back into our society. If you were to last comments to people like myself and others on the call, people like Cedric, for example, saying, thank you very much. It's been a very informative talk. And I'm sure there's a whole host of other people that share that view. What would be your last words to us for this morning in terms of encouraging us to come back into the hospitality industry?
Look, the hospitality industry, I mean, I can tell you, those that go into it don't leave it, okay? It's an industry that you either love or you hate, but those that get into it love it. And it really is an exciting environment. It is about making memories, making people experiences. And I think because it's always customer interaction, because it's always interaction with people, it is a people industry. And therefore you need those people to communicate. We have a lot of fun in the business. It certainly is an exciting business. Every day is different. Every customer is different. You're always working on events, entertainment, and everybody loves that. So, it is rewarding in terms of providing that experience to guests, and really, having your staff getting excited and having an engaged workforce. That's what it's about. That's what creates excitement. It's not sitting in a bank and doing things like that. Much more excitement, much more fun. It's a lot of hard work. People are working 24 hours a day. There's people there at 3 a.m. So it's a hard environment when you're sitting at the coalface. But certainly, as a leader in the industry here and as a sort of leader in our business, it is exciting. It is an exciting business. It's always dynamic. There's always some excitement around the corner.
Anthony, thank you so much. I really want to appreciate the time that you've given us and for sharing your insights. We feel inspired. We want to come back and spend a night or two at some of your properties. A whole host of people are posting their gratitude Zodwa Msimang says, we love it. Thanks for the insightful conversations. Kisa Mfalila says, thank you very much for an insightful discussion, quite inspirational. Wishing you all the very best in these challenging times. Lindy Smith, thank you so much. Such a privilege to start the day like this, especially when we are all alone at our desks at home, and so forth. There's a whole host of thank yous that are coming through. Really want to thank you for all. And guys, get everybody to watch this. We'll be posting it on YouTube and other channels, and we'll look forward to seeing all of us making the best of our hospitality industry. Thank you, and thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you, Marius. It was very, very insightful for myself too. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for listening.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony. I look forward to catching up with you offline in due course. And I now release you to go and earn money for the rest of the country. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Boris.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
Anthony. Thanks, Simil. Hey,
Thanks,
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye.